we shared a row in Parliament. We used to sit not very far away from each other. I will always remember how articulate you were. No little wonder now you are president. You are the first party president from Eastern Uganda. So the expectation as an Easterner we have about you is great, and I want to have that on record. Good morning, honorable members, and welcome to this meeting. I welcome officials of the Forum for Democratic Change Party, and I thank them for heeding to our invitation on short notice, very, very short notice. You are the first political party to respond and come on short notice. We thank you. We don't take you for granted. As part of our methodology to consider the statement by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs on the electoral roadmap, we are going to consult widely with the stakeholders on this matter before we can finally report back to the House. We are here today to receive the views of FDC party on the roadmap released recently as presented by the Minister. Honorable members, you are all aware the Minister of Justice yesterday brought the political parties and organizations' conduct of meetings and elections regulations 2020 to Parliament and was accordingly referred to this committee for perusal and report back in 1 week's time. By Thursday, we have to report. That means that other guests, including the FDC today, when they appear before us, we shall solicit some comments on the regulations so that we can be able to report back. I would request that FDC to share some thoughts, because this just came out yesterday. If you may not have written submission, it would be understandable. You can give some thoughts, and then you can take home and give us more when you go back, if you wish. Please keep your face masks on at all times during this proceeding, and keep your distance, social distancing. If you need some refreshment, please walk quietly to the table, set up the other side, and serve yourself in order not to interrupt the meeting. I would like to invite the team, the FDC team, to make their presentation, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In my culture, when an elder speaks on your face and confers good luck to you, it always comes to pass. I take note of your initial comments about my position as the head of the leading party in this country. Honorable Chairman and members of the Legal and Parliamentary Committee of Parliament of Uganda, I have a written statement that I'm sure is being circulated. We as the FDC address this Honorable Committee on matters related to free, fair and credible elections as being paramount to our democracy, even during a pandemic like COVID-19. Thank you very much for the invitation to interface with this committee, this being the second in just a few months. I am happy to be back to a place that was home to me for 15 years and to be able to contribute to the progress of democracy in this country in a position of leader of a political party. You wrote to us to ask us to brief you on our impressions of the recently issued roadmap by the Independent Electoral Commission. I know that being political practitioners, even if we received this legal instrument, the statutory instrument, just on the last night, we will be able to give our impressions of what we think as a political party is the intention of this particular instrument after we have addressed our mind to the first part of our invitation to this committee. In the revised roadmap, the Electoral Commission announced a ban on public campaign meetings and imposed a requirement on all candidates in the forthcoming local government, parliamentary, and presidential elections to campaign digitally, allegedly as part of the anti-coronavirus spread measures. The FDC is strongly opposed to this initiative because it is undemocratic, even as we strive to prevent and suppress COVID-19 pandemic. Free and fair elections should remain paramount to ensure sovereignty, stability, security, well-being, and the prosperity of the Ugandan people. In constitutional terms, this initiative is an overreach. It exceeds the limits of discretion constitutionally conferred to the Independent Electoral Commission or to government. In practical terms, it is not cultural and contextually conducive to Ugandan politics. Because as you will appreciate, we have had the kind of politics that we are used to. And of course, with the limitations in terms of development that go with what is now called digital campaigning, we have a big problem with what is being proposed by the Electoral Commission. But again, feel very sad that even as we consult, you as a parliamentary committee invite us here, there have been pronouncements already made by government indicating that they are proceeding with this repugnant proposal. And so you will notice that even despite the opposition to what has been proposed, we have a statutory instrument. I do not know, Mr. Chairman, whether we are interrogating this matter in futility. And so you will gain confidence of the public to come here if they have hope or a glimmer of hope that something might change as a result of this interaction. While it may contribute to the prevention and suppression of COVID-19 pandemic, we are concerned that this novel idea will have unwelcome effects of forbidding and discouraging the active participation of all citizens at all levels in their governance, and is therefore inconsistent with democratic principles as enshrined in paragraph 11.1 of the National Objectives of Directive Principles of State Power and Article 1.4 and 6.1 sub-article A of the Constitution. Further, it will trample excessively on fundamental rights and freedoms enshrined in Article 59(1)(a), which guarantees the right to vote, as read together with Articles 29(1)(a), 29(1)(d), 29(1)(e), and 29(2)(a), which also guarantees freedom of speech, of assembly, peaceful protest, freedom of association, and freedom of movement, respectively. Yet, as many stakeholders have pointed out here, and I am talking from the other side of the parliamentary world and elsewhere, there are less drastic means of averting the pandemic without destroying the pillars of our constitutional democracy. For the sake of brevity, I will not repeat them. Suffice it to say that the IPOD, the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, and the chairman of my chairman is right here, of which FDC is a member, presented its proposals in this regard to the Electoral Commission on the 19th June 2020. And I've provided a copy for your perusal. This is a general cry of the political parties that constitute IPOD, and the NRM, that is the ruling party, is no exception to this. In that document, you will clearly see that we take exception to the provisions that are advanced within the roadmap issued by the Electoral Commission, because it makes it difficult for us to identify flag bearers in our political parties. You might want to know, my dear friends, Mr. Chairman, that in the FDC we've had a practice of presidential flag bearers being elected after traversing the entire state of Uganda, soliciting for votes and popularizing themselves. We then convene a national delegates conference, which numbers up to about 1,200, to elect that one person who would then carry the flag for the presidency of the country. I know that NRM has got a national executive committee of about 30,000. When you go to the field there in Nambole, you fill it up to choose that single candidate that you have always chosen. And one wonders, how you are going to do this time around. I am sure that it's the reason why these guidelines are now being advanced to try to cut corners while injuring democracy that we have so much fought for to ensure that we bring to the right path. It's interesting, honorable members, Mr. Chairman, that the Electoral Commission would want to instruct political parties by what time to have their candidates in place. And that is item number 1 in the roadmap provided, that you should have elected or selected your candidates by such and such a time. What this indicates is the intention of the Electoral Commission to twist political parties, to bring them under their control, and the FDC certainly is going to reject this in the strongest terms possible. We also see that there is insufficient time given to political parties to carry out their campaigns, especially the presidential campaigns. The statistics about reachability using the digital campaign system are available for every Ugandan to read. It's very known Yes, Honorable Kamateka.
Through you, Chair, which are you want to hear them from him?
I didn't come with, I didn't come,
Hear him in silence.
I don't know whether your rules of procedures changed, because while I was here, witnesses will be given opportunity to articulate their positions and then wait for the fire to come from the Honorable Kamateka.
I'm sure the number is see you that side.
If it pleases this committee, Mr. Chairman, we will be able to provide the statistics about the reachability of our common media. While addressing my mind to this, I am confident of the fact that while soliciting for votes, because I've been a practitioner for a long, long time, spanning nearly 30 years, I've been in the andakis of the politics of this country. I know that the intention of every one of you who seeks political office is to reach the last woman, the last man, for the purpose of soliciting votes from them. The iPod has proposed some way forward to circumvent some of the challenges brought about by the method of campaigns and methods of election that are prescribed under the roadmap provided by the Electoral Commission. And I would like to invite you, Mr. Chairman and honorable friends, to read the statement by iPod that was issued on the 19th of June this year. In all fairness, it is within the powers of the Electoral Commission and government, acting in good faith.
Procedure,
Yes, sir.
just clarify that this document you're referring to is this one here.
Yes, and I will now lay it on the table, Mr. Do I have to bring it there, Mr. Chairman?
No, we can.
Where is the table in this case?
The table is the chairman's table.
No, we are here. What?
It is the president going to lay this on table, and that is a report from...
Is the one serving someone?
No. Is the president referring to the document? You're a lawyer, counsel, Kajara, you know. It doesn't matter.
Yes, just come from the other.
He has just come from his constituency
Yeah.
and is disturbing us.
Yeah,
I just wanted you to refer this because it's a very important document for us as a committee. And refer is not also signed. So this was just a statement.
Yeah, we shall get the chairman of the iPod Council to submit an authenticated copy, and it should get to you by close of business on Tuesday next week.
That would be great.
Thank you. In all fairness, it is within the powers of the Electoral Commission and government, acting in good faith and in consultation with Parliament, political parties, and other stakeholders, to consider and adopt some of these logical alternatives to campaigning digitally. In addition, I would be seriously remiss if I did not caution against further arbitrariness, unfairness, and irrationality in the rule-making process of the Electoral Commission and government, including the police and other armed forces services at this critical juncture. This is not the occasion to exploit and exaggerate the pandemic for setting arbitrary limits on people's liberties. For instance, we should not arbitrarily favor elite American-style town hall meetings while banning public gatherings in stadia, recreation centers, public parks, and other open-air settings, which can be appropriately delineated and policed for the sake of complying with COVID-19 control standards operating procedures. Secondly, we should not arbitrarily limit public gatherings to only 30 or 40 people, even in a stadium like Peche or Kacheka, in the name of COVID-19. Clearly, that is absurd. Thirdly, we should emphasize individual responsibility as the nation's first line of defense against the novel coronavirus COVID-19, which hasn't killed any Ugandan for the time being. Malawi has just come out of election where family rule was defeated, and we have a new president sworn in. There was a fully fledged electoral campaign beginning last year. And interestingly, Malawi has not reported death as a result of COVID-19. Thirdly, respecting people's dignity, equality, and freedom is essential in maintaining public trust. Friends, we are not only speaking for ourselves in the opposition. I'm speaking to the hearts of even those in the NRM. The stick that has been used for beating your co-wife should be thrown away, because it may be used against you one day. Paternalistic measures such as curfew and other high-handedness, draconian and repressive means of law enforcement in the name of COVID-19 disproportionately hurt the poor and most vulnerable among us, and are therefore always going to be ineffective in the long run, including the forthcoming elections. I'm sure that your strength and our strength as well in our election lies in your ability to guard your votes, which the roadmap and this statutory instrument is going to significantly erode. And so all of us political players have to be worried, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on. People will simply revolt. In fact, people will simply revolt against the injustice of the system and abandon any form of cooperation with precautionary public health measures advertised to them. If you have been in the countryside today, canvassing for votes, your agents or yourself would be carrying a campaign completely in disregard of the provided measures by the World Health Organization to curb the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. Lastly, this is not the occasion to exploit the pandemic and amend the Constitution purposely to profit, secure, and advantage some individuals or groups interested in retaining power by all means necessary. This would be selfish, counterproductive, and most unfortunate. FDC does not support the hastily undertaken constitutional amendments that is merely aimed at rearranging our politics in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are issuing a warning here because this is a very likely possibility. It is important to emphasize that the issue at stake is not when and on what political and constitutional terms the pandemic is to leave Uganda. We cannot get rid of the pandemic by clever legislation or opportunistic constitutional amendments. The correct issue, therefore, in our view as FDC, is whether our Constitution avails sufficient tools to the Electoral Commission and government to midwife free and fair elections in the context of COVID-19, which has never arisen before. It is most unfortunate that the Electoral Commission failed in its duty as an independent constitutional body to advise the President and Parliament at the earliest opportunity that the COVID-19 rules currently in force throughout the country prevent a normal general election from being held, so that the President would then be duly bound to declare a state of emergency or ease COVID-19 regulations appropriately, with a view to safeguarding our constitutional democracy. And I would like to refer you, Mr. Chairman and honorable friends, to Article 77 that states that you can extend Parliament where there is a state of emergency or a state of war. And Article 133D, which talks about a possible extension of the presidential term, of the presidential period, where there is again a state of war or a state of emergency. And then Article 110(1)(c), which provides for a pronouncement of a state of emergency that we know has not been exploited, even if all the conditions that would suggest or point at a state of emergency prevail in our situation as a country. FDC strongly believes that our Constitution, in its present form, is capable of rising to the COVID-19 and democratic challenge, and it supplies all authorities and persons interested in the forthcoming election with legal tools necessary to enable us to reason to a solution. Therefore, the Electoral Commission's insistence in leading the country to part scientific, part normal elections, which is not backed by the supreme law, is a sham, an absurdity, and we reject this in the strongest terms possible, as this would amount to a no election. What we are saying, Mr. Chairman, is that going to the election in the form in which it's being presented to us equates to a no election. And the outcome of that kind of election can be challenged legally. It can also be challenged with the power of the people in seeking their democratic rights. And I would like to warn the country and those who wish to propel this kind of election that the blood of the Ugandan people is going to be on their hands. Yes, it is the blood of the Ugandan people will be on their hands. And individual after individual will be held responsible for this. Therefore, besides campaigning digitally, there is genuine fear that at the 11th hour, the EC and the government may further exploit the pandemic to impose on us another aspect of voting digitally within the context of scientific elections, which is not recognized in our constitutional order. The way the rules of the game are being changed today is like the way amoeba changes its shape every minute. And you cannot even know what may follow after this statutory instrument that is being issued today. We've always been talking about the shifting of goalposts in a context that we in the opposition have suffered. And we envisage a real situation where those who want to hang on to power indefinitely will want to change the goalposts every time they find that we have been a little bit smarter than them. All this instability, fear, chaos, and confusion arises from the refusal by the government to declare a state of emergency at the earliest opportunity to enable the management of the Republic in a transparent and accountable manner during this crisis. Should it be inevitable for the country to stray into the murky waters of constitutional amendments, the only constitutional amendment the FDC would propose is for the introduction of a transitional government which will cater for a situation of no election that I prescribed before, at a time when they are constitutionally supposed to take place and the term of the current government is elapsing. We are in the process of generating a bill that we hope will see the light of day. Obviously, I'm sure that the ruling government, the ruling party is not interested in that bill. We'll try to see if it can come through a private member's bill for us to include in our constitution transitional provisions that will see a successor government to the current government in a manner that would include all the interests of all Ugandans. A meaningful, inclusive national dialogue should inform the process of forming the transition government. And I think this should start now, Mr. Chairman. Uganda belongs to us all. It is not the property of a single individual. And that's why the almost 45 million Ugandans who are here as citizens by birth or otherwise have got a say in the running of the affairs of the state of Uganda. In summary, and as I conclude, we reiterate the FDC position that this is not the occasion to unnecessarily tinker with the Constitution once more. I know you were hurt in this House when the Constitution was forced down, amendment was forced down the throats of Ugandans. We don't want to see scenes of our representatives, our most honored and respected representatives, being clobbered by the military in the sanctity of the chamber of parliament, something that had never happened in the total history of parliamentary democracy of our country. We do not want to see any amendments that would put the yoke of under the yoke of the pandemic while the whole nation is blanketed and broken down by some of Africa's most brutal anti-coronavirus measures, purposely to entrench some individuals or groups interested in retaining political power by all means necessary. That would be selfish, counterproductive, and most unfortunate. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Members, thank you very much for listening to me. I will now go and volunteer some comments, quick comments, on a paper that we received last night, sometime, in fact, early this morning. It was beyond midnight that I saw this. That's okay, let me just. Now, this statutory instrument is being brought to regulate the conduct of elections, conduct of meetings and elections, and all that it's premised on is a very, very low, very, very old Public Health Act. I think it's of the 30s. Shamefully, it is the document that is being paraded for us, where even in that document, there is nothing like the Director General of Health Services in it that is applicable today. And so, in our view as the FDC, this document, that law should have been amended long ago. It is one of the forgotten laws of this country that were brought forward to curtail the freedoms of Ugandans as something that those intend to perpetuate themselves in power indefinitely want to rely on. And so we think that this is unfair. It's being invoked unfairly to keep us down as political parties, especially those in the opposition.
Can we have one meeting?
Now, I am not going to comment on the interpretation clause unless otherwise required, in my submission. But as I do this, I want to promise, Mr. Chairman, that we will be bringing written submissions.
Can we have access to the document he's commenting on?
I know that Honorable Aston Kajara from time immemorial never attends committee meetings. I'm not surprised that he doesn't follow what happens in committees. I know him, he's my friend.
But do you know the name of this book?
Isn't it Mwenge something?
Do you know what
where people are drunk all the time. That was a joke, Honorable Aston Kajara, my good friend.
Please, Mr. President, let me see proceed.
Yes, I want to interest you in going with me to section 5.2 of this statutory instrument of 2020. And I would like to read verbatim, if you'll allow, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with Section 10 of the Act, and notwithstanding any provisions in the Constitution of a political party or organization, a political party may, where acting in accordance with its Constitution, this is not worded well, would contravene the provisions of the Public Health Act and the rules made thereunder for the control of infectious diseases, hold a meeting or an election for members of its executive committee, members of its organs, or sponsored candidates by any of the following means. This instrument seeks to legalize the manner in which political parties would carry out their affairs. And when you run down the list, virtual meetings, violation of people's rights to associate. Actually, the instrument is defeated by the Constitution and the provisions that I spelled out in my submission. Resolution by circulation, whatever this means. We'll need to internalize this. Phased elections in bits. I think the most ridiculous thing that I'm hearing in modern day politics in our country. Because you can imagine you who are going to go in the primaries, a situation where election results are announced in quanta, in small bits. The effect of these on what may be finally announced. I have told you that I have been in this thing for quite a while. And there is always, even in the primaries as much as it happens in the general elections, a tendency for people to alter results depending on the results that are coming out of one corner of an electoral area. It disadvantages a person who has not got the instruments of coercion, the mode or means of rigging an election. Secret ballot, open ballot, lining up behind the candidate of choice. If we are being limited ostensibly because of COVID-19 pandemic in associating, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how long the line of Honorable Kamateka has to be for the observance of social distance. Because you have 1,000 people turning up in a polling station, and they are expected to line up while observing all the measures issued by the Uganda government, guided by World Health Organization, including social distancing. If it is possible to carry out an election by lining, why then is it not possible to carry out campaigns in the open air of numbers that are beyond 60, of numbers that are beyond 2,000? And again, it defeats all the other aspects of public life today in Uganda for us to think that, people are not in gatherings. Go to Chikubo today, and you will agree with me that Chikubo population mingling and mixing could be beyond the size of 3 average-sized political rallies. So where is this coming from if it's not laced with interests? Elections by an electoral college comprising members of an organ of the political party or organization. Election by an organ of a political party or organization other than designated by the constitution of the political party or organization, whose membership is of a number that can lawfully convene without contravening the provisions of the Public Health Act and the rules made thereunder for the control of infectious diseases. The Electoral Commission is the custodian of constitutions of political parties. It's the information I want to give to you. They know about the processes that we go through as political parties to be able to identify and vote for leaders. This instrument is not alive to the fact that the Electoral Commission knows what we need to do as political parties. And therefore, what the instrument is doing, in my opinion, Honorable Chairman and members, is to forcefully amend the constitutions of different political parties. Without our authority, the FDC can only amend the constitution of their constitution upon approval by the National Delegates Conference. And for us, we don't see any need to amend the constitution. The constitution is ours. But Professor Ephraim Kamuntu wants to tell us what to do with our party. He doesn't have that liberty. What he would need to do is to join the FDC before he can have a say on the affairs of the FDC. And I want to invite him to do that. That is the only decent way to do this. Now, under 3, Section 3, Section 4, subject to Section 10(3) of the Act, the Executive Committee of a political party or organization may extend the term of office of elected members of the organs of the political party or organization, other than the term of the Executive Committee, where it is not practical to hold elections for the membership of such organs as a result of restrictions or other measures imposed by the Public Health Act, or rules made thereunder for the control of infectious diseases. You are saying to us that now the term of office of your office bearers has elapsed. Whether they're effective or not effective, whether they help the progress of the party or cause a regression in the progress of the party, let them stay there. What Professor Kamuntu and government is forcing political parties is for them to keep even those leaders who otherwise would have been in the best interest of the political party to replace. So who is Professor Kamuntu serving? In whose interest is he serving the people of Uganda? Because I know that he left UPC long ago. But this is repugnant. For us, this is not acceptable. And these restrictions will be defied. I want to say this in broad daylight. We are not going to, as a party, be subjected to the instruction of a cabinet minister who is in opposition to us, who is serving the interest of a person who intends to kill our political party. The FDC was founded on sweat and blood and sweat of Ugandan people. And it's going to take sweat and blood for he who wishes to see its extermination before it is exterminated.
For the record, are you saying FDC is mentioned anywhere in the proposed resolution?
Well, we are going to be subject to this. FDC, Mr. Chairman, is a registered political party, 15 years and a half old, for your information.
We just needed that.
Yes.
It's about political parties, and FDC happens to be one of them.
Yes, I think that my friend from JEMA the president of JEMA will stand on me on one side on this.
Do you want to introduce a stranger next to you?
I will come to that, Mr. Chairman. The stranger is a person who does not need introduction in this house, but I will introduce him from our side. The Honorable Nathan Nandala Mafabi, the Secretary General of the FDC and MP for Budadiri West, who should have joined us here earlier, but he was busy with issues related to the party. He's the custodian of almost everything in our party. So he's a very important person, including the money, and also he tells us when and when not to defy. He told us to defy this provision. Now, number 6, and he will be commenting as a lawyer himself in his own right on this instrument after I have rested my case. An election held under these regulations shall be considered valid as if it had been held at a duly convened meeting, convention, or conference organized by a political party or organization under its political party constitution. Effectively amending our constitution without permission. And again, this is going to be a sad provision. I know that it is going to be brought to you, or it's before you now, and you'll be reporting on it. Our prayer as the FDC is that if we can't have a normal election, then we are going to have a no election. Whatever happens using these instructions, which have come in the form of regulations, is something that is unconstitutional, it's unrealistic, and something that does not deserve any grain of respect from a political party as the FDC. I would like you, Mr. Chairman, to deal with these regulations, reject them with the contempt, treat them with the contempt that they deserve. They do not add anything to the building blocks of democracy of our country. And these repatriation regulations are meant to negate whatever progress we have achieved in the many years of the democratic dispensation of this country. I know that there may be vested interest in this all, and that maybe this provision will be pushed down the throat of Ugandans. I want to promise you one thing, if this happens, that we will go to the court of public opinion to deal with this. You are our representatives, and my prayer to you is that you listen to us, who cannot be able to come and speak for ourselves in this honorable house. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you very much, honorable members. I would now like to invite the Secretary General to make his remarks. As I promised, we will be providing to you written submissions on this particular case, and given the efficiency that we exercise in our party, the clerk should be able to receive this on Tuesday by the end of business. When are you going to the House on this matter, Mr. Chairman?
But the report shall be written on Wednesday.
So is Monday too late for us to make our written submission? Okay, we will work at it over the weekend and we'll be able to bring forward what I have said and what the Secretary General is going to say on this matter and what we will be considering as a political party as we digest this law that is not good for Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really want to thank you for responding in a very short notice in this regard. Yes, the Secretary General and also the Chairman of the comparative. And I was going to insist still more, but fine. Go ahead. Proceed, please.
Mr. President, first of all, colleagues, as we said, I apologize for coming late. It wasn't my intention. Some work. Because I don't know where we have begun and where we are, I want just to make one small rejoinder. There was a priest who was retiring. And this priest, the parishioners were making a party for him. They made a party for him. Now, usually it is the MPs, LC5s, who come to be guests of what? Honors. So, and they are always not late, but they are delayed. So what happened? This priest had to keep his, we said parishioners a bit engaged. So he started giving them stories. And one of them, he said, when I came to this parish, they told me it was the hardest parish. It had thieves, it had criminals, it's the best, in fact, in the area. And I can tell you the first person who came to confess, he said, I am a murderer, I am a thief, I'm what? So the guest of honor comes. And that was at the MP of the area. And he said, oh, priest, thank you very much for being here for us. But you remember, when you came, I was the first person who came to you to confess my what? My sin. So everybody knew. Kumbe the thief was the... So to avoid making a mistake, I cannot repeat whatever, I don't know, but so I want to just make just two small things.
Is it because you would be the thief or your fear to be the thief?
Maybe.
Yeah, but that's a good story.
It is for the committee. Now, Mr. Chairman, recently, we don't want to, we're in multi-party, we don't want to amend the party which were put in the Constitution by just regulations. And for an election to be credible, we need it to be credible. If you, the Committee of Legal, discover that what we want to do is not credible, you have the capacity to state so without fear or favor. There are many people talking about credible elections, and I recently had an opportunity to listen to the bishop. Is it called Bishop Kagwa? He was explaining about what an election should be and what should be done. And he said, if need be, then there must be something to be done other than panicking. So having said that, there's nothing to say we should make election which resemble an election. There's no one who can campaign without reaching somebody. By the way, we have interests. Supposing me and Andala want to stand for president, I need to go to Karamoja and say, guys, I've come here, give me a what? A vote. This TV is for a few. I need to go to Karamoja. I need to go to Agago. I need to go everywhere. And we need to go to Wejo and a campaign that I'm standing. That's my home area. That's where I come from. But they will also need, because the younger ones may not have seen me of late, they will need to see me. So, Mr. Chairman, we need an election which everybody would believe in it. Yeah, that's Kadodi. So even the bishop says that I cannot vote somebody I've not seen by my what? My eye. If a bishop, a real bishop who is next to God, says he needs to see, what about you who is not near to God? That's one. Two, you see, a professor brought regulation, which I want to say yesterday we had him presenting. He is trying to come and force us to follow what he wants us to do. But I think he's looking at one, this law, if we pass this regulation, it will affect all parties. But I'm lucky I've been around for some time. And one of the person I want to show you is Aston Kajara. And I want to give him examples. Yeah, and I'm happy that he's now a member of a committee, not one of those passing the regulations to bring it to Parliament. And I think he will look at it well. Aston will remember that one time when we were making the Constitution of Uganda amendments in 2004, and I happened to have been with my party president, one of the guys from Chiboga got up and said, we don't want independence in this Constitution of Uganda. I don't know if you recall. Because at that time there had been a way, the president of the day was telling his party, you see, all of you are my own people. I'll make sure you go on in unopposed, you'll be the flag bearers and whatever, having told them at the back. Because he wanted the thing to go through. So when it came, this gentleman said, no. And there was by then a super minister called Amama Mbabazi. It was Amama Mbabazi. He said, yeah, I think Chowalia, you are right. He was called Chowalia Dan. You know him. You are right. It is me who was saying, Chowalia, you're making a mistake. Please, we need to have independence for tomorrow. And we will somehow manage to put independence in the what? In the Constitution. So Chowalia goes for primaries with a man called Yere from Tororo, Yere Ofono. Those are the two people I want to refer to. So the first culprit to be headline has lost primaries was Dan Chowarabye. You recall, he has lost what? Then we got to John, he said, no man, I have to go independent. Then we asked him a question. If we had removed the independence, would you have a leverage? What I'm trying to put is that. The second one was Yere Ofono. He said, no, we need to cut the term of parliament short. We need quickly to go for these elections and whatever. Yere goes to Tororo. He was even one with not a Ugandan. Down. He has been away for 10 years. He has just come recently. But we even met him and said, if we had cut the term short, he would have suffered for even more longer period. So having said that, colleagues, this law does not affect either FDC or GEMA or whatever. It affects all of us, whether you're in the ruling party or what. So we want you to have a positive mind in this and put yourself, in case it goes this way, what happens to me? But not say, we make it for them. It can easily become for you. So having said all those, I want to request that these regulations of Professor Kamuntu, first of all, should be rejected in totality. Two, this Mukama thing, he's saying, we went to meet him as I put, and he said, the command is the Constitution under Article 62. I think that's what he said, 61 or 61. Then we said, and he said, unless you do it, there's nothing I can do. Then we asked him that in that Constitution, where is it written that in case there is a COVID-19, what happens? He said it's not there. So we said, supposing now as it is, where do we put it? He said, unless members of parliament you put it, that's when we can deal with it. So, Mr. Chairman, we request that we should have credible elections and the regulations should not come to manage parties. I thank you. No, I asked. No. He said he is being commanded by Article 61. And I want you to write that's why I love you. You listen very carefully. And he said it is, I love her. That's my Valentine. I paid everything. I paid everything. And the very addition. So he said, I want to repeat it, Aston, that Article 61 commands that he should conduct the election. And the election must be free and what? And fair. But some of us saying that as much as it commands you, is it going to be free and fair, given the fact, the method you're going to say the campaigns will be done? Now, we ask the question, in this constitution, show us what happened if there is COVID-19. I'm just, okay, now if you want to go further to say pandemic, he said it's not there. Now, what do we do in the circumstances? Do you have to remain in the same state when this situation has happened? Is when he left it to us, who may be in Parliament. So that's what I wanted to put. Thank you very much.
And now you are before legal committee. I hope you will make proposals. Honorable colleagues, join me in appreciating the FDC party, President and the Secretary General for the presentation. First of all, as I said before, you are the first political party to come and give your views on the revised roadmap and the statement, but also the first to make comments on the regulations being proposed under Section 27 of the Political Party Organizations Act. And we really appreciate that you could speak off the cuff and then make those very valuable recommendations. I want now to open to members as they turn their phones in the silent mode. And before I invite the first member whose hand is up and the second, I've seen two people, I would like to put this question from the chairperson to the party president. Do you think there is COVID? If the answer is yes, can we have elections the way it's being proposed? From your submission, you've been very, very critical of the mode of campaign, and you made proposals for town hall meetings. Did I get that right? So, if you don't think we can have election, what are you proposing? We want these things very clear, so that when we are reporting, we don't say, the committee thought that the FDC said this. We want to write, because this is a matter, and by asking you, do you think there is COVID? I'm not belittling anybody, I just wanted us for emphasis. Maybe you dispose of that, and then I can get off. Mine is just...
Yeah, I know, Mr. Chairman, where you want to take me.
Not to...
There is evidence that there is COVID. And we've seen people dropping dead in a number of countries that constitute the global village. Italy, France, China, America. In there, hundreds of thousands. The World Health Organization and scientists detected COVID, and they declared it a pandemic, coronavirus, a pandemic. But that notwithstanding, Mr. Chairman, the fact that it didn't seem to be fully recognized as impacting negatively on the lives of the people of Uganda, the people in authority did not find it necessary to raise the red flag to the extent that a state of emergency could be declared. We were told to stay at home. We were even told not to walk out of our homes by dusk and stay at home up to dawn. Businesses of Ugandans were closed and public transport disrupted. And by the way, as I speak now, slightly less than 40 districts of this country are still enduring lockdown. Yes. Under lockdown. What that means is you cannot move or carry out business the way you would have loved. That being the case, and it's contained in my submission, the wisest thing that needed to have been done would be to declare a state of emergency. And you know, under Article 110, it's only one person in this country who can do that. That one person is General Museveni. He didn't do that. And so you cannot invoke Article 77 or 103 to cause a possible extension of the presidential term or of the term of parliament every 6 months at one time that you extend it. For 6 months, every time that you extend it, I beg your pardon. Now, in the absence of war or a state of emergency, we are left with no solution but to juggle. Because if I may ask you, Mr. Chairman, do you know when the pandemic will go?
The answer is in the negative.
That's right. So, and this is why we say deliberately in our submission that no level of legislation or cutting corners, you can't legislate the pandemic out of this country, can you? You can't. Any other steps meant to cause an extension without a state of emergency or a state of war would be violating or injuring the Constitution. You can't extend. The term of the president is coming to an end. The term of parliament is coming to an end. COVID is still there. What do you do? And this is why we are advancing a proposal for a transitional government that will bring everybody together.
Where is that provided for?
It will be a constitutional amendment.
But on a
Any other constitutional amendment will be constituted as being done by people having a vested interest. I want to remind you, my dear
because you
friends.
just said, just for record, you said you are proposing, no, there should not be cornering or making an amendment.
No.
Yes.
I have said that you have a problem even introducing a proposal for an extension. Because you do not have the conditions that would necessitate, under its current form in the Constitution, you do not have the conditions that would help the pronouncement of an extension of 6 months. And you know your term is coming to an end. The term of office bearer is coming to an end in May next year. Maybe to be more precise, on 12th.
For the president, 12th, for members of parliament, 18th.
Well, those are just 6 days, Mr. Chairman. Those are just 6 days. Well, you're right. You have slightly longer time than the president. But you see, why we are bringing this, and if Mr. Museveni declared a state of emergency today, he would have made it more simple for all of us. Because you then could go to the House and say, no, we can't have an election. We'll extend the term of office of Parliament by 6 months, as is provided for in the Constitution. And nobody would raise a finger against you. You don't want me to remind you about the outcry that happened in the population when Parliament unilaterally attempted to extend their term and the term of president by 2 years.
And I think on this, since you are speaking to the committee that processed that bill, I think God used this committee that time to foresee that there would be things like now.
But the court also used God to say, you know, you are trampling on the toes of my children, the people of Uganda. I won't allow this to happen. So, all I am saying that whatever proposals you make should not be laced with interests, because you could be misunderstood. And this is why, at an appropriate time, we want to come and deliver to this parliament and to the people of Uganda our proposal for a transition from the current set of administrators to the next set of administrators. And I want to say 4 things that we envisage happening during that transition. And this is the first time we will be saying this on record here. Number 1, we think that our country has been so much polarized that we do not see ourselves as Ugandans, but we see us as ourselves as those against us. So we need to have truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation of this nation of Uganda. The second issue is bringing back the institutions of the country to life. Today they are owned by, they are property owners. In fact, they are property, these institutions. And some people in our country can do whatever they want with these institutions. Thirdly, we want to go and look at the Constitution again. The Constitution, unfortunately, has been turned into a piece of paper without much meaning. And then it's envisaged within the transition that there will then be organization of political parties and a free, fair, and credible election. And we will have a new Uganda. That is just a snapshot of what we think would be done within that period. But as I said, we need to dialogue over this as Ugandans and come up with a document that is good for us all.
Thank you. I think we appreciate that, and for anybody taking notes, this committee is not in process of processing any bill or any constitutional whatever for extension or otherwise. What we are doing now is drawn from the House. People, many members were concerned about the statement of the minister, and the speaker referred. We didn't ask for this work. These people would be in their constituencies, that we should have a conversation like this and we report back, because election is a public affair. And honestly, this is Honorable Yaguma. You want him? Okay, acting chair of PAC, wonderful. Yes, so honorable members, I think that should be clear. As we process this, it's purely on behalf of the plenary, we are handling this to report back so that the decision will be made based on our recommendations, whether our findings are that, in fact, whether there is a legal regime sufficient to carry out election. If not, what do we propose? So, Honorable Basalroy, you had your hand or you're scratching? Yes. IPOD chairman, the JEMA president general, the only member of parliament from the party of JEMA. And,
Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Okay, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I want to associate myself with the statements that have been made with the President of the FDC and the Secretary General of the FDC. I share in totality the views that have been expressed.
Are you writing a report or you're just saying that in the passing? Member is not supposed to
Mr.
show
Chairman,
the side until...
having introduced me in the other capacity, and a colleague is here, it goes without mention.
Your sins are forgiven.
Thank you. I want to play devil's advocate in two respects. Number one, Mr. President, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, particularly Section 27, gives the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs to make regulations to operationalize some of the provisions in that act. And in the statements of the Minister, and even in this statutory instrument, he makes reference to that authority. In your view, is it that he exercised the authority he did not have, or he exceeded his authority? Just clarification on that, playing devil's advocate. Number two, Mr. Chairman, is to ask colleagues from the FDC on three fundamental aspects. Given the circumstances we find ourselves in, is it your view that we should have our normal traditional election as we have them? Or we should have a legal framework that enables us to undertake scientific or digital elections as they are being touted now? Or we should consider extension of the elections?
By the way, the law does not provide. The elections can be postponed.
And I'll come to that.
Not the other way around. Yeah.
I'll come to that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll come to that aspect. So, normal election, as we have them, Mr. President, you have made reference to Malawi and others. Scientific election, guided by a legal framework, or a postponement or extension or suspension, whatever you want to call it, given the circumstances. I wanted some, concrete response to those aspects. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the second last is on the issue of elections versus health. I think the president of the FDC has indicated that we recognize that the pandemic is here, but we also need to have elections. And Mr. Chairman, already you appreciate the dilemma we find ourselves into, especially in the previous attempt to extend our term in office. We lose the moral authority to even talk about an extension, given our previous experience and attempt in this House. But that notwithstanding, there is a dilemma. The pandemic is here and the elections are here. How do we reconcile the two? Finally, Mr. Chairman, on these regulations, what they seek to do is to say the sake of NRM. I'm just giving an example, considering that Mama Veronica is a senior member in the NRM. What these regulations are saying.
Why is NRM more attractive to you than German?
Mr. Chairman, what these regulations are saying, is that the sake of NRM, that has, I think, about 30 people, can sit and extend the tenure of the Women's League, the Youth League, the Entrepreneurs League. Okay? And the NRM caucus. And all the other organs of the NRM can be extended by SEC. Okay? But this SEC here remains intact. So other offices can be extended when their tenure has expired. But for the SEC, or what they call the executive committee, okay, cannot be extended. So these regulations are even silent. But what if the term of SEC itself has expired? What happens? How can an organ which is functioned as official extend a tenure of another organ? How can that be? I think the president of the FDC labored to explain that. And the reason why I'm using the example of the NRM is because the regulations were brought by a minister. And this is the impact it's likely to create. Now, over and above the fact that they contravene, especially Section 10 of the Political Parties Act, Article 71 of the Constitution. Mr. Chairman, you as a distinguished lawyer, since when did the subsidiary legislation override a statutory provision? Since when? And since when did the regulations amend provisions of the Constitution? Because the Constitution is saying you must have regular elections. The Act is saying the regularity of those elections should be 5 years. And you are bringing a regulation to say, actually, it can be beyond. This is the biggest contradiction, the biggest travesty in the constitutional history of this country. And that is the dilemma we find ourselves into. Finally, the Secretary General of FDC made reference to the meeting they had with the Electoral Commission. And the chairperson of the Electoral Commission was asking them that there is no COVID in the Constitution. In actual sense, actually, it is not true. The Honorable Nandala Mafabi, the Electoral Commission was here. I think it was Wednesday. We actually indicated to them that in that constitution there is COVID. It could not have been explicitly stated, because you see, a constitution cannot be impregnated with all sorts of statements. But when the constitution talks about public safety,
Since you are Musoga, I will forgive you for using the word, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just being figurative. You as a student of literature, you know figurative.
I'm sure somebody else wouldn't have used the
You know
issue.
metaphors. This is figurative language. These are metaphors.
You go ahead.
This is a style of speech.
Yes, yes. That favors where you come from.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I have actually lost the point. Anyway, by all sorts of statements, when the Constitution says in Article 110 that one of the circumstances upon which the President can consider to declare a state of emergency, and the Constitution says public safety, okay? Protection of public safety. It is a very wide and elastic term. And I don't see any other description of preservation of public safety than COVID. Mr. Chairman, in Gambia, with 55 cases, Gambia declared a state of emergency. 55 and 27 recoveries. In this country, Mr. Museveni is closing churches, mosques, and everything, and is saying there is no need to declare a state of emergency. What a contradiction. A very big contradiction.
Examples of where state of emergencies have been declared?
Several. In fact, Mr. Chairman, all countries that have been devastated by COVID-19, the only legal response has been through declaration of states of emergency. In Kenya, in other countries, the state of emergency has been applying all over the country. In other countries, it has been specific places and areas. Okay? Even in this country, we have had states of emergency applicable to specific geographical areas when we have had either natural disasters or diseases. But if we agree that corona is a challenge, is a pandemic, then up to now I don't understand why Mr. Museveni has not invoked the provisions of Article 110. Whatever we are talking about here would have been solved by that declaration. Then there is this misapplication of the Constitution, that a state of emergency will mean the President handing over power to the Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I have read this Constitution from the first page to the last page. Nowhere does it provide that when there is a state of emergency, the President hands over power to the Speaker. It is not anywhere. Unfortunately, I have had some discussions out there, and I have asked, show us the provisions. They are not there. 77, 110, 103, it is just not there. So I don't know who is propagating this skewed understanding of the Constitution. So I want to reiterate my support to the position adumbrated by the President of the FDC, that the only way of going out of this conundrum...
What did you say?
The only way of going out of this conundrum is to follow the proposals that have been given. Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Thank you. You're really very pregnant today with words. Honorable Otto, Mahmoud, Edward Agago.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, allow me add my voice to those thanking the President of FDC, General Secretary, the entire team for Secretary General.
Sir, Secretary General.
The Secretary
You start
General.
with Secretary, then General.
Yes, Secretary General.
Thank you.
We're guests.
For-
Don't
and
think you're in
the-
the plenary.
And the chairperson of Gisu Cooperatives. Chair, thank you so much for your insight, for your contribution to this. It is indeed, I found it very invaluable. Chair, I think, as you stated earlier, I want to single out the president of IPOD, who happens to be a classmate. I think I am starting to question what went on in this class. It's a great class. I'm proud to say so. Thank you so much, my brother. And I agree with you on a number of issues.
That is the beauty. People want to associate with good things. I'm sure if you were embarrassing, he wouldn't have mentioned that.
Chair, I want to note that I've also canvassed the provision of the Constitution, and I think that I've seen in a state of emergency that the president keeps reporting to Parliament, but not how do you report without being there? So I think I want to agree with my brother. Chair, Chair, I also want to agree with my brother that under Section 27 of the Political Party Organization Act 2005, the minister has the mandate to bring this instrument to Parliament, just like my brother stated. Chair, I also looked at the provision of the Constitution, Article 71, 72, 73. It gives grounds for Parliament to regulate the activities of political parties through the Act and regulations. So I also find it a bit contradictory, or maybe sort of a double standard, that we've just concluded the Political Party Organization Amendment Bill 2019, and it was something that was before this committee, and we are dealing with these regulations, and we did the work without any complaint that we are trying to amend the constitution of any party, NRM or any other party that is registered, including the one of my brother, Ajema. So I agree with his sentiment that I think the minister has the mandate to bring this instrument here. And we will agree or disagree with it. That is up to us, based on, and his input is relevant for that purpose. Chair, allow me to say that that equally, we have the FDC here today before legal committee when we are processing this matter. They have given their input, but they will not make the decision for us. I want to think that where there is a health pandemic, I think just like we do it in court, we get expert opinion. This is a health matter. Would it be a problem if we allow the authority, the Health Act or the Health Authority, with their mandate given by the Constitution or the Act, to guide us, because they are the experts on this matter. So is that, by doing that, are we trying to, is Electoral Commission or Parliament trying to give away the power, that guidance from the health experts or the scientists? Is that giving away the mandate to conduct election under Article 61, among others? Chair, I also want to think that I want this question answered for me. That under Article 61 of the Constitution, Electoral Commission is mandated by the Constitution to organize not only parliamentary or local government election, but also the presidential election. Now, my brother alluded to Article 77 of the Constitution, which only allows Parliament in a state of emergency to extend their term for maximum, I think, a period of 6 months. We do not see provision for extending the term of the president. If we are to do an extension, are we going to do it for Parliament because it is Parliament, presidency, and local government? Are we only going to do it for the other two?
Honorable Member, he didn't talk about extension, he was actually against.
I understand that, but I'm just saying if we were to go under that constitution, this is another thing. This is a concern of,
You want to leave that for the in-house?
we can leave it for the in-house. Chair, other than that, the president stated that I think I needed some clarity, but I did not want to disrupt. That at some point he said that what Electoral Commission is trying to do is to bring, is it the American town hall, or put like a group of 30 to 40. And I think yesterday when we met with SEDU, they were saying that if they would prefer an amendment of the Constitution to extend the election, but if it was to take place, they would want more participation. I think if I got you right, you talked of maybe if that you, I think, did you say that if election was to take place, you would prefer an open air, maybe 50 or even to 2,000 people, depending on the space? Like I think you mentioned Peche Stadium when you were talking about that. It was not so clear to me. I wanted clarification about that. But what is of interest, I think, for me or to the committee is that we have talked about the provision of maybe amending the Constitution and extending, if possible. That is one option for us, that election should be postponed. But if election is not to be postponed, and if we are stuck with the provision that says, 2021 there should be election without that amendment, and we have to do election, what are your, what creative ways do you think could be put in place other than this digital mode that the Electoral Commission has talked about that could increase participation, maybe could make election seem like fair, free? Are there other things within the health, the pandemic? Is there any proposal from you?
The FDC team will explain. And I think, member, you want to conclude?
Yes, and I'm concluding, Chair, that when it comes to this particular instrument, I think the owners of this instrument are yet to appear before us to explain what they mean. But I have seen provision that my brother referred to about the executive committee maybe not being elected, but other people, their terms could be extended. There are such provision. It appears to me like they are looking at sort of electoral college. What is your view on electoral college under your, and maybe finally, how have you been doing your primaries?
The general import of these regulations is to give effect to having a leeway out, providing a leeway out for political parties who would need to congregate to elect party
in big numbers,
office bearers, and they cannot be. So this is providing an probably a safe, I don't want to say an exemption, but a safe way to make sure that parties can do that, and in so doing, in view of this, they would not be in breach. And that's what the president of the party, FDC, said, that in a way amending their constitution.
Amends their constitution.
And when he said amending without leave of the party. So, and of course, yes, he's speaking as a party leader. They have their own setup.
Yes.
They know how they need to get office bearers and what.
Yes.
But this is purely because we have COVID. And this is a justification from the minister under Section 27. Now, whether they are agreeing to this or not is why they have stated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether electoral college is not before us, matters of how parties will go, whether lining up or what, how they get their flag bearers, that is not before this committee and cannot be. And I think we'll get everyone is concerned. This one is suspending some of the provisions that would require validation from the party constitution. It's giving them a leeway, a safety way that you can do this and it will not be in breach. To get a party president, Nandala Mafabi, from Elgon, if we will stop being coward,
Chair.
Party presidential candidate.
Chair, I believe that the minister will come and justify this instrument and make us understand. But I think it would be interesting to, the provision of the Public Health Act that you say it is a very old law. I think that is something that we would be interested in looking at also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving up. Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think the questions are too many. We need to deal with them. Otherwise, we could leave members. Yeah, because this gentleman was talking, thinking we're in Canada.
Want to
That's
find
where the
out who
problem
were their
was.
lecturers, the classmates. That was that class. I want to find out their lecturer anyway. So they caused about 7 questions. But can we have those 2 disposed of so that we can get a set of people who are in a different class?
Mr. Chairman, don't worry. Mr. Chairman, we're asking the party, my president, but it would be better, you know, to give a small drum first, then the big one. Mr. Chairman, if they have made a law, like now the Political Party Organizations Act, and I've said the minister will make regulations, does not mean that every section in that law is supposed to be regulated. By the regulations are very clear. They will say this, only this, maybe doing this, it will be a regulation. Maybe doing this, it will be a regulation. I'll give an example. The Accountants Act, it is very clear, it says, for purposes of election of a council member, the minister shall make what? Regulation. It is coming clear saying that section 52, there will be a regulation. So, sir, not every section in an act must be regulated. So that's what I wanted to make clear. So the minister cannot regulate and go beyond what it should be. You know, and for you who went to law school, for me, I'm from the mountains and up there. Now, having said all that, Mr. Chairman, now, if a minister is coming to make a regulation, in that law, it is very clear that parties will register to Electoral Commission, and they will register their constitutions. And when you register your constitution is how you operate your activities. Now, in that registration and whatever, does not say that the minister will make a regulation on how party constitutions shall be run. And I think my brother Otto, you better look through the law very well. Yeah, and because you're from Canada, it would be better you understand this in a better way. Mr. Chairman and the members, it's true in the Constitution, pandemic, COVID is there. It's there. And that's why I'm happy my president of the summit, my chairman of the summit has said it. It's public safety. But public safety has so many things. And this public safety here we are now seeing is making some districts, some part of the country say, you can't go there, you can't go in, you can't go out. And I think, Chairman, if you went to Toronto now, we would arrest you. If you came out and if you have gone there, we shall quarantine you for 14 days before you do anything. And no vehicles leaving. And Mr. Chairman, that's it. Now, when you are looking at scientific elections, and I think that's where, again, our colleague Goto would have helped us, because he's looking at Canada and Uganda. Please, in Uganda, the way you know, because we know why we're referring to you, we know why we're saying, Mr. Chairman, people come here thinking that where they are coming from is where we should practice. That's why we must make it clear. You can't order me. I'm the Secretary General and the Chairman of this cooperative union. Mr. Chairman, but having said that, so scientific elections, you see, Mr. Chairman, what have they put up? They are saying we shall use TVs, we shall use radios, we shall use social media. I want to do this, I want to confess. First of all, I come in from a region, of course, recently it was declared second to Karamoja in poverty. But we believe we have some little income. But this income, if you got a villager with a phone with WhatsApp, I think you come here, I'll give you cash. For us, our villagers, the phone is to pick and call when and where you give me some mobile money, or to receive whatever it is. Basically that. So you cannot use the number of phones and assume that everybody will get information. I am very certain members of parliament here have more than two phones. So if you are computing people who have phones, you will discover that the number you declare that these are phone users, one man has 10, has 5, whatever. But as long as you guess sometimes you have abandoned it. So you will discover that the effective users of phones might be 4 million. So what happens today to the rest? So having said that, it can only be better if even voting will be electronic. Because now you should train us. In Uganda to vote, you must go on the line. I will get it. So you have campaigned on radio and TV, then voting should be on radio and what? TV. Because if I'm going to line to cast a vote, I'll be in contact with what? With people. And to do that, it will take time. So unless you are saying we do scientific campaigns and do scientific voting. So now train us electronically how to vote. Now everybody will send his vote electronically. It will be far, far better. Again, I come from the Accountants Institute, accountants background, leaving the legal part. Right now, we're carrying out elections in the institute. Because we do electronically, we have said, first and foremost, campaigns electronically, and the voting will be what? Electronic. We have started it. Now, that one, because we don't need contact to have AGM where people will line up or talk. Even the AGM will be on electronically. So the moment you do a system, then the system must be executed up to the end. Not to do it on one system and leave it in the middle. Now, the dilemma of COVID and whatever, yes, again, by the way, if we have talked about the NRM, the chairman of NRM, if you can close a mosque and close a church where we believe God is, and we believe where God is, there's no danger. Yeah, because God is in charge of everything. You close those ones. Then you allow a polling station. Then you allow a polling station. These are things we should think about outside and say what it is. America, the delegates who vote, you know them. How many? I think 520. This area sits, they decide, they have one delegate who go and cast one vote. One vote. The other can cast whatever. So the delegates where they get, as if I get 200 and I think 61 votes, I have won what? Election. And that applies to Canada, where you have been most of your useful time. So you cannot bring, that was the useful time he had now. So because of that, you cannot compare and come and ask us in Uganda that, now give us an example. If we cannot go scientific, what other method should we bring? What do you expect us to bring? Do we tell villagers that we have brought another method from God? If we cannot manage scientific, then there's nothing more we can add. And the only one we can maintain is a free and fair where everybody meets the other and discusses and wins.
What is, in your view, free and fair in view of the prevailing?
Free and fair?
Yeah.
Well, my party president will answer. That one is very, in the prevailing circumstances,
Yes.
a free and fair election is
If
where...
we must have election,
Exactly.
how should we do it?
If we must have a free and fair election, I started with myself. You have been saying I'm a coward. I'm not a coward. I am going to Karamoja. Should I go and hide in the room to talk to my brothers, the Karamajongs? I should be there to talk to them. And you see a campaign is won like what? She said, Kadodi, the numbers of people you have can sway others to what? To join. But on TV, if I am standing with Mzee Museveni, he will take the prime time and tell me I should only talk on UBC after midnight when people are what? Asleep. He said you can talk for 4 hours, but the time he has given me, people are what? Asleep. So would that be, yes, he will say I've given you media. So this media is complicated. The other one, a councillor, let us talk about even MPs. How much will you pay if every 1 hour, 1 hour to talk is 1 million? So if you want to talk 100 hours, you need 100 what? Million. Now, how many MPs are competing? Let us give numbers. Woman MP Tororo, there are 6. Constituencies, how many? Let us say there are 5. No, 5. Times how many candidates? 6. That is already 30. That is 30 what? 6. If we all go and book an hour, you need in a day, you need 36 what? Hours. Which lady has 36 hours? There should be news, but even a day has only 24 what? 24 hours. So all these are just complicated things.
And even out of 24, they are used for hours.
That's what I'm saying. There's news. There's announcement that somebody in Nagago has died. And there's sometimes people have to sleep. So all this said and done, it is important that surely the law, the constitution is there, but we need to look in it in detail and understand it.
Before you came, the president, your president, party president, said something about town hall meetings, where it can be regulated. You put the hand washing thing, you can say you can have 500 people, especially for presidential, you know. And the other day I should during the meeting, a member.
Let me tell you, my brother, Mr. Chairman, I'm not cutting it short. Let me give an example. I go to Malaba. I'm going to have a town meeting in Malaba. I have invited 5 people. Then the Bagiswas were there and the Chapadola said, Nandal is available. They come. Why chase them? And now the police tear gas comes in place. I have missed my meeting, not because I never invited the few, but because the numbers wanted to see what is happening. I can tell even town halls will be a venue for war, because it will depend the candidate who has come. Of course, there are candidates who can go there and in the town hall and sit, and even the people they invited, all of them may not come. But there are candidates.
You mean presidential candidates?
Whatever.
You have never had some getting less than 500,000
across the entire country?
Actually, I know of one who got less than 60,000.
No, Abed Wanika has never got 100,000 in his life. Even the Uganda population is more than that. That shows him himself having at home, he cannot get enough. So that one, those are some examples. So, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to conclude like this so that I give my... Now, Mr. Chairman, the Central Executive Committee, the regulations which are coming are basically from a minister of the ruling party. And yes, the law is. And the complication they're having is because they want to bring and regulate their primaries and the party, whatever the case. But having said that, I'm very sure that my chairman of IPOD has mentioned it very well. He said the executive is not touched. Now, who touches it? There must be a law to touch it. Now, you cannot regulate a law for others and not for yourself. Even primaries will need people. Even what? So, I want to say in a nutshell that if COVID is a serious issue, which is not, he has said public safety. But public safety, there are so many different public safeties. There are those public safeties whereby even you can run away from your wife. So if it's a public safety where you can run away from that is one thing you can think about. We must think about it. So if it's that nature, how do we handle it? So we must be very careful. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Chairman,
you, Secretary General. Yes, Mr.
Secretary
President.
General has responded to most of the questions, but I will just say one or two things. The first is that we are not in any doubt that the minister has powers to bring a legal instrument. What we are saying is, does he have to bring anything because he has powers? I would have expected that this should have been well thought through, and we have proved our case that I think he had skewed attention towards serving the interest of his party while proposing this instrument. And what we reject is interference with what we do as the FDC, which is not his business. And I just said here, Mr. Chairman, that if Professor Kamuntu wants to be part of FDC or wants to influence what happens in FDC, he should join, or JEMA, he should join those parties.
In one of the parties.
Then he has to keep there. If he cannot, like he shouldn't, serve more masters than one, then he should serve the master that he is currently serving. So, Section 27 of the Act, Political Parties and Organizations Act, certainly gives him powers. But like the Secretary said, it does not apply, regulations do not apply to every line in that act. They are section specific.